Hello, BookTube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. I'm just going to do a little haul today because I haven't done a Friday Reads in ages, and that's normally when I show you the one or two books I pick up every now and then. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the physical books that I've bought, which is not very many, and I'm also going to catch you up on all the Kindle books I've bought, which is a bit over the top because I do get sucked in by those 99p deals, but and I haven't shown you what I've bought on Kindle in ages, so we'll go through those. And I'm also just going to go through 3 audiobooks that I've picked up because I've got a year-long subscription to Audible, so I've got like 12 credits and I've been buying those, and I've finished my I listened to Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers and Return of the King, and I've finished now, so we'll go through what I've bought on there as well. First book I bought, a physical copy, is one that I kind of learnt about partially. Well, my workmates really like this book. They have a book club that they've been in for like 25 years or something, and this is one of the favourite books they've ever read in it. And also, this book was in the Big Read, which is a big poll in the UK in 2003 to come up with the nation's favourite books that I'm sort of mildly obsessed by, and I kind of want to read all of them, but a lot of them are children's books. But this was in the top 100 books in the UK back then in 2003, and it's quite an old book, but I never hear it talked about anymore, apart from I saw Charlotte from Coin Reads there talking about it, and I think maybe someone else has read it. I can't remember who, but it's Catherine by Anya Seton, and this is a sort of historical fiction about John of Gaunt's wife, Catherine. But yeah, I love the cover, and I love every cover I've seen of this book. And she's also written a sort of Arthurian legend book as well, which looks interesting. But yeah, this sounds interesting. I always love good historical fiction. The second physical book is The Curse of Shalon, which is Lois McMaster Bujold. This is the first book in the Five Gods series. This book has some really good covers in it for it as well. This one's alright, but there's some really good ones. I've already read book 2 in this series, which is Paladin of Souls, and that's because that won the Hugo and the Nebula Award, so I was reading all the Hugo and Nebula Award ones. You don't really need to read them. You don't really need to read this one to enjoy the second one, but I really loved the second one, and I thought I should go back and read this one anyway because it sounds really good. But yeah, so that's sort of very medieval historical fantasy, so and also strong female characters, which is good. The next is a second in the series, which is The Janus Stone by Ellie Griffiths, and this is the Ruth Galloway series, where she's kind of an archaeologist in Norwich, and she gets involved in kind of archaeology murders. I read the first one of this last year for March Mystery Madness. I think it was in March Mystery Madness, but I read it in one sitting in one day, so I really enjoyed it. It's not like amazing literature, but I found it interesting. I love archaeology. I did an archaeology A-level, so I found that part of it very interesting, and there was some dodgy kind of fat shaming in it, I found, and that was true of another series that I'm gonna read as well. But she seems a bit harsh on her own main character sometimes. Next book is the third book in that series, which is The House at the Sea's End. So these are all good March Mystery Madness pickups. And then the last physical book I've got is the other one that I thought had some weird fat shaming in it, and that's Elizabeth George's Inspector Linley Mysteries, and this is the second one in that as well. I really liked the writing in the first one, but I had issues with the book. But I'm going to trust in them and continue reading them and give them a chance, because I always hear great things about Elizabeth George's books. But yeah, that first book had some dodgy elements to it as well. But as I said, I did like the writing, so we'll keep going with the Elizabeth George and see how that goes. Also, I own like the 14th book in the series or something, so I need to read up to that. Let's go now through my Kindle books that I've been buying. So I normally only pay 99p for a Kindle book. If I see it pop up, I very rarely will pay more than 99p. I will only pay more if I'm like desperate to read the second book in the series or something. Start with a modern romance, which is Beth O'Leary's The Switch, which I bought a couple of days ago, I think. I read last year what's it called? The Roommate, something like that. The Flat Share, that's it. The Flat Share. It's there. And I loved it. I gave it 5 stars because I think that was as fun modern romance as I've read. I loved it, so I definitely want to give her another go. I can't remember what the plot of this one is, but I imagine it's some sort of boyfriend switch or something like that. But we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I don't know when I'll read that. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for a modern sort of silly light book, so that might pop up soon. The next book is The Children of Ash and Elm, A History of the Vikings by Neil Price. I've seen lots of booktubers read and review this and enjoy it. I think Deb from Rainerines was a big fan. Vin enjoyed it. John also enjoyed it. So basically all the historathon crew seem to have a good time with this, although I think some of them do prefer other Viking histories. But it looks really interesting. I love the cover. And I've never really read a history of the Vikings. I did an A-level in medieval history, which kind of obviously dealt a bit with the Vikings, so I'm not completely unfamiliar with them, and I have read some of the sagas, so it would be interesting to hear a more archaeological point of view about the Vikings rather than through their literature. Next book is Alien Clay by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I'm a big Adrian Tchaikovsky fan. I think he's probably my favourite science fiction writer that's still producing regular works, and he definitely produces them regularly. He does about 2 books a year, but I haven't read one in a little while. I'm tempted to reread Children of Time when I know there's a big group on BookTube reading modern science fiction books, and I'm not very good at modern science fiction, but I do love Children of Time. I think it's a brilliant book. I'm tempted to reread that. Alien Clay, don't really know what it's about. It's something to do with the ruins of an ancient civilization, and some professor gets exiled to this planet that's very dangerous but has interesting ruins. So I trust in Tchaikovsky. I'm sure it'd be good. Next up is The Fifth Son, A New History of the Aztecs by Camilla Townsend. I learnt about this book originally from the Rest is History podcast, and I think Camilla Townsend's been on the Rest is History podcast, although I didn't listen to that one, but they did a big series on Montezuma and Cortez, and it was like a really long 7 or 8 episode series, and their meeting. I just found it really fascinating that there was this massive civilization, sort of totally isolated, that we didn't know about, and just it's an incredibly interesting story. And they really praised this book because it's sort of a revisionist history based on only indigenous texts. So a lot of histories that are written about Cortez are based on people who the sort of primary sources of the people who were actually there with Cortez. So the invading force, really. So this is from the indigenous side. So that sounds interesting, and that could be a quarter 2 of historathon one for me. So that will be interesting, and also it's not super long, which is good. Next, we've got one that I don't really know a great deal about. I can't remember where I even saw it. I think I saw it on Reddit, but I have heard about this series before. It's On Ballast Station by David Weber, and it's the first in the Honor Harrington series, which I think is kind of militaristic science fiction, and it has a female lead. It looks a bit like Ender's Game sort of thing to me, but we'll see how it goes. It's always interesting to have a female lead in a series like this, and I think it goes on for like 16 books or something, so if it's good then I've got lots to read. Next we've got The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny and Murder by David Gran. I have read Gran's book The Lost City of Z, or Z as English person would say it, and I enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as I read it when I just finished Endurance by Alfred Lansing, which is one of my favourite non-fiction books ever, and I was trying to chase the same kind of buzz from that, so I wanted to like an adventure story gone wrong, but it didn't live up to Lansing, which is no shame. That book is amazing, but I really am interested in sort of naval stuff a lot more than jungles, so I will be I've seen lots of people praise this book, so I picked it up as £1, so give it a go. Next, I mentioned the Rest is History podcast earlier. This is a book by one of its hosts, and it's Never Had It So Good, A History of Britain from Suez to the Beatles by Dominic Sandbrook. This is, I think it was a trilogy of really big chunky books he wrote on modern Britain. So this covers the 50s and the early 60s, and then I think the next book starts in 64, 65 or something. But as a host, I love Dominic Sandbrook. I think he's a great podcast host and a really interesting man, and I've always wanted to give his books a go. I've read lots of Tom Holland books or a few Tom Holland books, the other host, so it's time to give Dominic a go as well. His books are much harder to find than Tom's. Another history next, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, A History of Nazi Germany by William Shearer. This is perhaps one of the most famous ever World War II histories, certainly Nazi histories. I've tried to buy this before. I bought it on eBay, and it turned out to be an illustrated edition that was what's the word I'm looking for? Condensed. Not condensed, whatever the official word is, but it was just mainly a picture book with bits from it in, so it wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted the whole book, and I've read bits of it on Kindle when I had it on Kindle Unlimited before, but it's such a massive book. I know I wouldn't be able to finish it in a month on Kindle Unlimited trial, so I'm glad to have that, and it will pair nicely with my James Holland trilogy of World War II books that I'm going to read first, and then I can go back and read sort of the Nazi side rather than a general overview. Last two books are Delphi Complete Works, which Deb at Rainer Reads has got me hooked on now, because they're just really nice ebook editions of complete works. Sometimes you get complete works on Amazon and stuff that are just chopped together by random people, and so these are nice, well done editions. So I got the Delphi Complete Willa Cather. I've read O Pioneers and My Antony, and I loved both of them very much, so I will happily read the rest of Willa Cather's works. And the other one is the Delphi Complete Works of L.M. Montgomery, which is very useful because I have been making my way through Anne of Green Gables series, so I've got all of those. Finally, let's go on to my audiobooks that I've hauled. This first one I see talked a lot about by the brothers Gwyn and other sort of people who like historical fiction and fantasy. Although this is just historical fiction, I guess. It's Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon, and it's read by Ferdia Lennon, which is interesting. I always like when the audiobook is read by the author, because they seem to know the flow of it better. And Ferdia Lennon's Irish, so can't go wrong with an Irish voice. Lovely to listen to. And this is sort of a historical fiction kind of comedy, I think, that's set in Sicily during the Peloponnesian War, and they're putting a play on. I think it sounds kind of silly and fun, so and it's been universally praised everywhere. It's quite a new book for me. The second one is, I was looking for some March Mystery Madness ones, so I got two mysteries as well. I got The Killing Floor, the first Jack Reacher book by Lee Child, and I've started listening to this already. It's much more kind of macho, modern military thriller rather than the kind of old ladies with tea cozies mysteries that I normally read. But I've been loving this already. I've listened to the first sort of 2 or 3 hours, and the guy who reads it has such a sort of American advertising voice, and Lee Child's writing his descriptive writing is awful. It's like unrelated sentences, and this guy just reads it in a really monotone way, which is like Stuart Lee once does a joke where he says that Dan Brown writes sentences is like the tall man stood by the red door, and that is kind of what Lee Child's writing is at parts. But the rest of it's all really good fun, and it's really hooked me. But it took a bit getting used to the audiobook, because it just sounded like an advert. But now I realise that his voice actually does suit Jack Reacher as a character. And then the final audiobook and the final book of the haul is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, and this one is his first book that's not a Thursday Murder Club book, and I adore the Thursday Murder Club. I had a great time with it, so I hear reasonably good things about this one as well. So I think it's more 80s than 80s style, rather than Thursday Murder Club, which is kind of like Agatha Christie style, but modern. So yeah, I trust in Osman, and I've listened to all of his on audio, so I trust his choice in audiobook as well. So that's my physical ebook and Audiobook Haul booktube. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you've enjoyed any of these, or if you're interested in any of these. I'm especially interested to see how many people read Catherine, because I'm always fascinated when a book is so well known that it's in the top 100 books in the UK 2 decades ago, and now I never hear it talked about, so I'm interested in that. Have a good one, booktube. Bye.